Hi guys, I see that you're hopping on here. Hold on a second. Got Jonah. Got. Oh, there's Nick. Oh, Nick's looking all dapper. Roxanne. Nick, I think you're muted here. It sounds like you're muted.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, I can.
Brilliant.
Are you getting? You got some sun? Looks like.
No, bad lighting.
Oh, well, I like the lighting.
It's dark. You know, what can I tell you? You know, I work well in the dark.
Got some pod feeds coming. Okay, guys, when you guys jump on, if your video is on, go ahead and kick it off for me and hit mute. You should be muted on the way in, but just in case. Okay. Nick, Josh. And just while we're getting started here, my name is Chuck Wang, and I'll be moderating today's webinar with Nick. Nick Dunkerley is our creative director at Hindenburg. He's got the great hair going on right now, and he's in Denmark.
We had a nice summer. What can I tell you?
Yeah, and I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri, in the Midwest for a bit here. So definitely happy that you guys are on with us today. Okay. Okay, there we go. Oh, if you have questions ahead of time, go ahead and queue those up in the chat box. And what I'll do throughout the course of this hour is to kind of keep an eye on things, right? And we'll ask questions to Nick at the end of today's webinar. Nick really likes Q&A, so what we'll do is we'll try to load up on Q&A as long as we have enough time to get through what Nick has in store for us today.
Well, I actually saw that you added a few additional points to the agenda, but what I was thinking that we often find that people are struggling with is managing their files. Now, doesn't that sound funky? Let's do file management, shall we? So I thought that it might...
I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure that we give people time to hop on. Nick's
No, I'm just chatting. I'm not doing anything.
All right. I'm making sure. You're excited. Nick is excited to get going.
I'm so excited about file management.
Aren't we all?
I get all warm and fuzzy inside. My son's coming home. One sec. Hej, skat. Jeg er lige gået i gang med det her medvæsen, men vi er ikke sådan rigtig gået i gang. Men vi er til. Kan du sige hej til verden?
Hi. Say hi. Isn't that awesome? Guys, just so you know, Nick is on a boat right now. He lives on a boat. He's in Denmark, like I was saying earlier, and that was his little one. That was Jeff hopping on the boat, coming home from school, I assume.
Scout. No, it's this evening.
Well, you might have nights.
It's 9 o'clock in the evening.
Kids stay late, don't they? Are they allowed to stay late these days? No? I don't know. Anyways,
I hope so, because I just let him. No, it's a school day, so he should go to bed in a bit. But he's 13; he'll be fine.
But the cool thing, guess probably
parents out there going, "No, he should be in bed by now."
Is that in
that case he's not there in the background.
Nick's doing this really cool thing where he's gonna. You want to tell a story? Or you want me to tell a story?
You tell a story.
Okay, so. I love boats. Nick's on a sailboat right now. He lives on a sailboat.
You want to tell that story?
Yeah, that's the story. And what Nick's doing is he's going to buy his son a boat to live on in the berth right next to his. How cool is that? That's.
To be honest, I'm only doing it to get rid of him. Oh, sorry, he's right next to me. I don't understand English. It's a bit awkward.
And I have
seriously, he's been living all his life on a room that's about that big, so he needs a bit more space.
So I have this a vested interest in it because I actually want to stay on the boat while I go visit Denmark.
Well, I want you to come over and actually help do the build because it's going to be a big build.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. Honestly, I'm not kidding. I'll be there next summer for the.
Okay, you can stay on the boat while we build it.
Yeah, great. I'll be all covered in fiberglass. Thanks.
Steel, you'll be fine. It's steel and wood.
Okay, it looks like we're getting close to time here, so I'm going to share my screen real quick, just to give a recap of what we are covering today while we're having fun here. And then afterwards, Nick will take over for most of the show. All right. And we try to keep things fun, light, informal. But today's live training, what we're going to cover is everything that you've seen already. I just want to be consistent in terms of marketing. We have to be consistent. We're going to cover file management, best practices, and how to organize your sessions and your materials, and how to share your assets, in collaboration. I think that's a big thing that people miss in terms of what we're doing today. And the subtopics are workspace, selection, clipboards, markers and chapters, and how to publish and save. But if you guys have questions at the end, I think that's where you get most of the benefit from these live trainings. Because anyone can watch a replay, but it's questions that are tailored specific to you and what you need. Those are what we really want to address. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Nick Dunkerley, our creative director at Hindenburg, and I'll let him take over the screen when he's ready. All right.
You say that, and now I have to remember how to do that. Share screen. There we go.
Yeah. My whole thing is I always worry about hitting like the unrecord button or like that end button. That's my biggest.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, here we go. Can I close that? Oh, don't dare touch it. I have got the exact same feeling. I don't dare touch anything.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself out here. And I'll keep an eye on people that are trying to get in still as much as I can.
Okay. And all of you, you're welcome to just write questions to Chuck, and he'll pass them on as we go. And right, let's get on with it. Okay, so in this webinar, I hope the sound is fine. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about file management. And I do realize this is probably the most boring topic in the entire world. But the advantage of doing proper file management is that you will not lose files. And one of the problems that we often see is that users end up with a session with empty files. Now, I could actually try to demonstrate how that would look if I just save this for a second. Okay, so what will typically... What does that mean? Don't ask me. I'm probably doing all the mistakes that I should be doing. Okay. So just to explain first and foremost, when we save a session in Hindenburg, you actually have two elements. One is a tiny little file. You can see this is only 44 kilobytes. And this is just a session file. And the only thing that's in a session file is a text file. We can actually even see it if you like. Yeah, I know this is just starting out heavy and nerdy, but let's do this while everyone's still awake. Now, how do I find a text editor? There you go. Okay, so if you open up a session file, all you see is just text. This is why it's so small. And the text here is just referring to the different files. So in this case, it's referring to music, and this is the length, blah, 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 blah. So this file here is only a text file explaining, if we go back here, like a region like this, that you start playing the music or whatever, you start playing it here and you end playing it here. So it doesn't have, and the important thing to remember is this doesn't have any sound in it. The sound is in this folder here. So if I open this folder, I get all the WAV files and what have you. So this folder contains all the audio. This file here just contains the information about the session. What sometimes can happen, if I just close this down here, what sometimes happens is that you will try to send a session and only send this file and forget to send this one. So if we now delete this file here, and now I try to open this session without the audio, it's going to look like this. It's going to say locate folder or locate missing files, and it's got 42 missing files. And sometimes what then will happen is just say, I don't really care about all that. That's all jibbery josh. So then you will open up with a session look something like this, where everything is outlined in red, and you'll have empty files. Now, some of you might have actually tried this and gone into a state of panic. I would if I've never seen this before. But really all that's going on is that we've opened a file that doesn't have any file folder to refer to. So what the system is trying to tell you is that there is no audio, and please would you tell us where it is. I wonder if I can undo that. Oh yeah, I could undo that. So if you're anytime you're saving something, remember these are the two elements. If you want to move anything around, move both of them around, not just one of them. And if you're trying to save space and you see, oh, this is a big folder, I'm just going to delete that one, that's a bad idea. So these two stick together. I hope that's very clear. Now, let's see if we just open up this session again. Another thing that will typically cause some problems when it comes to missing files is if you try to move a session from one place to another. I could do this by just saying, I'm just going to obviously take these two files here because I just told you all that this is the way to do it. And then I could move them into a different folder. Let's see. I'll put them on my desktop somewhere. Okay, so now just move them to my desktop. This might actually work because I haven't tried this one out on this session. But this is not the best way of doing it. This actually worked in this case. But what can happen is that the way that Hindenburg uses the operating system is that if, let's see, if I actually do a demonstration of that, I could, how can I best demonstrate that? Maybe I'm going slightly off topic. It's going to be a bit complicated. But the thing is, I might actually have used other pieces of audio from other sessions in this session. Hindenburg is quite clever this way. You can easily do that. You can copy and paste between sessions. And what will happen is we'll just link to the other session. And normally this is not a problem. If you delete that other session, then we'll still know that this audio piece is being used somewhere else, or just put it into that folder, and it's all very clever. The only situation where it can be a problem is if you're moving from one media to another, if you want to share this session with someone else. So if I just took these two now and drag them onto a external disk or a stick or something like that, I might not get all the associated files with it. So the best way to move something to an external device is always just to stay inside Hindenburg and then do a save as. Now, the point of using save as is that when I do that, I will have all my files copied to that folder. So that means that all associated files that I've used from any other session, what have you, will be copied and put into that folder. So now in this folder here, I will have all the files I need for this session. So the best way of sharing a session format is by using save as, and do it from inside Hindenburg. Was that enough on, you have to stop me here, Chuck. Was that enough on file formats?
I think we're good. Yes.
We're good. Okay. So let's try something else when it comes to collaboration. I don't know if any of you are doing this, but it's quite easy to do it. If you are working together on a piece. So let's just start from the beginning. I want to find a piece, this one. So I've been working on this part of the project. Now, a friend of mine's been working on the last bit of the project. So what I can do is it's the same way that I can import a piece of audio, I can now import an entire session. So I just press import. And I find the session that I want to use. It has to be in the same file format. In this case, it's 44K. And so now I'm just importing an entire session. Found the session, and here it is. So I get the whole multi-track thing that my friend has been working on, and I can now just continue working on it and put it all together and do an export. What do you say, Joe?
Nick, can you try that one more time?
Sure. Okay. So this is my session. If I just want to place it at the end here. So just put my playhead at the end where I want to import, and I press import. And usually when I do an import, I'll be looking for WAV files. But in this case, I want to look for session files. So I find the session. Now I've got the session file here, but keep in mind, I still need to have the audio files as well, because otherwise it's not going to work. So whoever you're working with, they need to send you both the session file and the audio file. Now, back to the session file. So I've got the session file here. It's in the same bit format, so it's a 44K and not 48. I just say open, and it shows up here, the imported. There's an alternative to that. If someone has been doing some tracking for me and just added some clipboards, I just want to import a clipboard from a different session. So then I can just place myself in the clipboard. I hope you all know how the clipboard works. Say import, and again, just as I did before, instead of importing a sound, I can just import from a session. Oh, here we go again. See, this is the problem you have when you don't pay attention to what you're doing yourself. So I'm in a 44 session. I'm going to import from here, and here we go. I've imported all the clips in the clipboard from that session. That can be quite handy.
Let's do that one more time. I think it's actually really important, Nick. Importing from the clipboard, just the clipboard by itself.
Okay. New session. So clipboard, import. And keep in mind, I'm working right now in a 44K session. So if I want to import something, I have to do it in 44. If I do it in 48, I cannot import this because it's the wrong sample rate format. So 44, so it all fits nicely. Did I just choose a session where there was no clips in it? I'm doing well. I did actually. That's one. There you go. Now I can just use these clips as were it clips I just imported myself. You okay with that, Jack?
Yep. Yes, we are. Nick, let's take one step backwards and actually let's just go through the clipboard itself, because I think there might be some confusion on people not actually using the clipboard ever.
You're not using the clipboard. Oh,
Right. And that could actually be an issue because it's like probably one of our greatest features.
The clipboard is fantastic. Okay, let's import some audio. Now, just imported an interview. And what you usually would do in a door is that you will run through the interview.
So I'll probably hold the microphone. Yeah, my name is Simon.
And you just want to find those, highlights of the interview. And typically speaking, you'll just find them, mark them, put them onto a scratch track, something like that. This is a typical way of working. There's nothing wrong with that. The only problem with it is that if you have a lot of clips, you can very easily get lost. And even worse is if you start doing, I often see this with the younger users, they get all enthusiastic about it and they start doing some editing. And they might even go in and start doing, I don't know, go all wild on it and put some music in there and what have you. What does 45 mean? Have I been speaking for 45 minutes? Or have I got 45 minutes left?
You've got 45 minutes left.
Right. So I have to pace myself. If this looks messy, it's on purpose, because this is what you usually get if you just start editing. You get all clips all over the place, and suddenly you're not quite sure what's what and what mixes you've already done and what have you. And getting lost in your audio piece is really annoying. There's different ways of getting around that using markers and what have you, but using the clipboard is actually quite clever. Now, for instance, I could just take this, let's go back to the actual interview. So instead of placing this clip here on the scratch track like that, what I could do instead is just drag it over here to the clipboard. Now it's over here. I can play it back.
Yeah, it's kind of a different story, but...
And I can give it a new name. What have you. And I can even say, well, this is this group here. I want to use that for the interview with Simon. And down here, I might have an interview with, I don't know, Bob. And up here, we call this speak. This is just because we're Danish and we obviously use the wrong English word. So you would probably call this a voice track. And I might even have recorded some voice tracks earlier on, so I can just go in and find my voice tracks here and put them in there. So the point of the clipboard is it doesn't do anything really. It's just a placeholder for your clips. And it's a way of organizing itself. Now, if we go back to this clip I did before where I started doing some edits and mix, I can even take this one here and just put that into my clipboard. Let's call that a mix. I can have a listen to it here. And I could actually hear that mix. And whenever I need it, I can just drag it out again and I have my original mix. And this is all non-destructive, so I can always go back and continue editing it. So it's very, very flexible.
You know, what's also really great about the clipboard, using the clipboard in this aspect of it, is that if you have intros, outros that you use or that you switch out quite frequently, perhaps maybe you have ads or you have, different segments that you want to address, you can save them and you don't have to go find them later. I mean, everything's already edited, everything's at your fingertips, and you just group it, drag or drop it back into your workspace, and you're ready to go.
Actually, we've got, what you're thinking about here is the favorite, because the clipboard will actually follow this session. If I now make a new session, then the clipboard will be emptied and I can just start using it. The favorites, on the other hand, if I put something in the favorite bin here, they will stay all through my sessions. So if I have jingles, opening for the show, what have you, I can just place them here. So if I go up and say a new session now, I don't want to save this, everything goes away except my favorites.
Nick, real quick, just can you show people where they would find or how to set the clipboard in case they don't have it on their workspace?
Okay, so let's say you've closed it down for some reason. There are different ways of going about it. You can go up to View, and then you'll find your clipboard here. And you'll also in View find your favorites. If we just close them again, a different way, if you go into Window and say Reset Layout, it would also show up again. Good. Just going back slightly to sharing session, I'm not quite sure how many of you actually do this with sharing sessions, but I just wanted to repeat something. Let's see, I'm just going to open this session here. We often have this issue where more than one person is working on a session and they want to share it, and they ask, what is the best way of doing this? And sharing sessions using email and so on and so forth, that doesn't work because the audio files are so large that they will never fit into an email. So the best way of doing it is to use some kind of cloud storage. Now, I'm not saying that you need to use Dropbox. You can use any form of cloud storage as long as you're using something that you can get to all parties. I'm not sure you can do that with iCloud, for instance. So what I would do is I would do a save as, and then in this case I have Dropbox, and in that I've created this, in this case, this webinar folder, and then I'll just save my session to, yeah, you can replace that, it's fine. Now, when I want to share this with someone, I don't know if any of you are using Dropbox, but the way to, yeah, well, this is just so typical. Let's go back here. So you just right click on that folder and then you can share it. And when you share it, you just type in the email of whoever you want to share it with, and that's it really. And then if they have Dropbox as well or access to Dropbox, they will, the session will be synced in the cloud, and they will be able to automatically have it update on their computer as well. So you can have it as a shared folder. So anytime I do any changes and put it into this folder, it will be automatically updated on their computer as well, which is really clever. Now, one thing to keep in mind, which actually is really clever, is that obviously you don't want, if you are collaborating on a project, you don't necessarily want to be collaborating on the same session, because then you might be overwriting one another's work. So it's a good idea to have a convention where you give things different names. So if I now said save as, and instead of calling this Carl 44, I can then do maybe something like _ Nick. So I know this is mine. Now, so what I'm doing now is I'm saving the session again. Great, so save the session. If you were doing this in some other systems, it would do a new session and copy all the files and what have you. If you're doing a lot of drafts, different drafts, that's not necessarily what you want, because you'll be filling up your hard disk within like 2 seconds. But what's happened here is I've just given it a new name, but there's not a new folder. And because this is placed within the same overall folder here, the session here knows to refer to the audio files that are in this folder. So I can do as many drafts as I like. I could even go in and say, okay, I'm going to do a new mix version of this one. It's going to look like this. Let's try this out. I'll just save that, and I could do this draft 1. So now we have 3 different versions of a file, and they're all pointing to the same audio files, and it's even in a Dropbox, so it's shared with whoever I want to work with. So it's a very, very flexible way of working, and you don't have to worry too much about, are you doing anything wrong? Just make a new draft version, knock yourself out, try something new, and then have fun with it. Back to you, Joe.
No, I completely agree. And another point to really hone in on with that is all you're doing is you're referencing the original files. Like Hindenburg is not destructive. So whatever you do when you edit your slave session, it's not going to mess up your original files. So you're going to be good to go.
Yeah. So, and as you can see here, I can just go back and open the previous version, and I have a version where I haven't mixed up all my mix from before. And yeah, it's a great way of working, especially if you are doing something that's a bit more complex. Because the worst thing when you're working, it's not really understanding the technical side of things. It's more of a mind game doing audio edits, and the mind game being, I'm scared that I'm going to mess anything up, so I'll better not do anything. So what I hope that you can take with you from here is that as long as you're slightly careful with your file management, you can just knock yourself out and just play around with it, and you're not going to mess anything up. Now, should we go? Is that enough about file management? And is there anything else that might be interesting to have a look at?
No, I think those are pretty big. I mean, I don't think most people take advantage of the session, like the ability to share sessions and import sessions, and how to really use a maximize or optimize workspace. And I think we've really hit that on the head today.
Great. Well, I'm happy about that. Is there do you see any topics out there that we should try to address while we're here?
Actually, I'd like to address markers and chapters. I think there's some confusion overall in general on what's the best use of markers and chapters and why we would use them.
It's a very good question. Markers are a great way of navigating your audio. Now, what we did before was say, well, you can use the clipboard for navigating chunks of audio. But as soon as you're into a mix that looks something like this, you still might have a hard time actually figuring out where you are. So is this where he talks about, I don't know, shoe sales or whatever? So sometimes it's a good idea to just add markers. You can add markers in different ways. You can just go up here and right click and say add marker. Obviously, there's a shortcut for that as well. In this session here, there's quite a lot of markers already. Let me just delete them, and I'll give you a better idea of what we're talking about. You can open markers just like you can open everything up. See, we've got a markers bin here as well. I'm just going to delete all these markers here. Great. So let's start from the beginning. So I just want to set a marker like that. So this is now called marker 3. I can go in and rename that marker to something that makes sense. I don't know, let's call this Act 2, for instance. Now, whenever I'm just somewhere in the session and I'm not quite sure where I am, I can always just tap on this marker and it will place my playhead at that point where I set the marker. Because it's marker 3, I can actually just press 3 and it will also just jump to that marker. Let's place that somewhere else. We can rename this. Let's rename this to Act 1 instead. Sounds like someone's got a microphone open. And somewhere down here, we must have an Act 3. Okay, so again, it's just a if you're doing larger pieces, organizing yourself so you don't get lost is just really important. So now I can just jump to, by pressing 3, to Act 1, 4, we'll jump to Act 2, and 5, we'll jump to Act 3. So it's just a really quick way of navigating. Now, someone out there might be thinking, why is it 3, 4, and 5 and not 1, 2, and 3? Because what's wrong with 1 and 2? Well, the thing is, if I do an in and out marker now, like so, you'll see that the in marker is marker 1 and the out marker is marker 2. Now, if you've really been paying attention, then you will probably guess that if I press 1, I will jump to the in marker, and 2, I will jump to the out marker. Just another way of navigating really quickly. It's really cool. And by the way, if escape is your best friend in the entire world, if you've got a selection like that, just press escape and everything will go away. If you're used to setting, thank you. If you're used to setting markers by using I and O for in and out, that is fine. There's also a different way of doing it where you can use, if you're on Mac, it's Command 1 and Command 2. On Windows, it's Control 1 and Control 2. It's just to follow the logic of setting marker 1, marker 2. And going from the same logic, if I use, I'm on a Mac, so I'm just going to use Command 3, I would actually move that marker to this place. If I place my playhead here and say Command 4, I'm going to move my marker 4 to this place. So if you use the command or control on Windows key, you're moving your markers or setting markers. If I wanted to set a complete new one, I could say maybe Command 6, and I'll have a new marker there. So jumping between them, you just use like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on and so forth. And setting them, you would either just right-click here and say Add Marker, or you can use the shortcut to setting a specific numbered marker. If you just want to set the next marker, you just use Command Enter, and it'll just set a new marker, or Control Enter on the Windows. So that's markers. Chapters. Chapters are really just markers with a different name. I can even convert this to a chapter marker if I wanted to. There you go. Call it a chapter. Now, why would you want to set a chapter? Originally speaking, the reason why we added chapter markers was because that Apple has, and still has, a really cool feature where you can add chapter markers to your podcast. So you could have an hour show and you could divide that into different chapters. Unfortunately, no one knew about this, so we implemented it, and it was really cool, and no one had any idea how to use it because you couldn't find it in iTunes, so no one was using it. But we did it anyway. And we even have a chapters view. So if you ever wondered what this is, it's a chapters view. So down here, you are now able to rename your chapters. You can even add a title and URL to it, and that will show up in iTunes. So if I had more than one chapter, let me just put another chapter in there. So you can imagine the show here. I don't know, is this only on my screen, or can everyone see this thing that's floating on top? Can you figure this out? So I can now navigate to different points in the show. I could even add a new image to this one. So go in set image. Let's see. What kind of images will I go? Oh, very neat. There you go. I had no idea that was there, but it's a really cool image. And so now I would have, I could have chapters, a show with different chapters, and each chapter could have its own image, its own title. Give that one a name there, and give that. Now, this was in the olden days of podcasting, where iTunes was the only place you could do this. And the only way that you could have chapters represented was using AAC. So if I wanted to export it, the only thing, file format that would actually support chapter markers was M4A or AAC, depending on how you prefer it. So this would then have chapters in it. Nowadays, we also support chapters for MP3, because MP3 also supports chapter markers, so we also support that. So if you are considering doing a podcast and using chapter markers, you can do that. If you can find a player that can actually play back those chapter markers. But we do have users, especially in Germany, I'm not quite sure why, which customize their website so they can actually utilize these chapter markers. So now you know, chapter markers. That's what they're there for.
Hey, Nick, remember back in the day when people would go back through and try to cut segments out of their workspace and their markers would shift, or they wouldn't be able to find what they were looking for because of a shift in the markers? Does that still apply today?
Yes. It does. Okay. So if I do, let's see, let me just try something slightly more simple than this project, right? Just going to close down everything here. Yep. Just going to import some audio, and I'm going to add some markers. Right. So now I've got some markers, and I've placed them exactly where I want to have them in the audio. And I'm all excited, and I start editing down here. And if I edit something here, everything is going to move. But my markers, they've just stayed there on the timeline, because these markers are sticking to the timeline. They have nothing to do with the audio. So now they're all screwed up compared to where I wanted to have them in the first place. Not very good. So a way to go about that previously has been, if you are doing an edit, you could do an edit on all tracks. If you edited on all tracks, then they would move. Not the best solution in the entire world, because you're not always going to be editing on all tracks. So we've now introduced a different type of marker, which is called a cue point. So now I'm going to add a cue point to this point in the audio. I'm going to add a cue point to this point in the audio. So if I do the same thing again, I'm just going to do an edit, cut that. Now everything moves, and the cue points, they will move along happily as well. If I take this piece of audio and move it over here, the cue point will just stick to that.
That's pretty cool, isn't it? I think that's pretty cool. I've always liked that. I think it's one of those fun things where, you know, if Nick says something funny, I want to watch that. You know, and I want people to know. And if I don't want to lose it, that's where it is.
It's true. And actually what I would do is even better. I would just, if I actually ever said something remotely interesting, I would put that into the, to the clipboard. I can always use that later. And one of the things I would use the clipboard for, if I'm doing something really complex and I want to, if it's a conversation and I want to pace it properly, one of the things that you often find yourself doing is the hunt for the good pause or the hunt for the good breath. Now, if I'm listening to something like this, I say, oh, that's a really nice, you never hear this anywhere else in the world saying, oh, that's a really nice breath. I'm going to save that for later. But in our case, we actually do that. So that's a nice breath there. And I'll just put that in here and call that nice breath. And I could have a number of these, and I can also have a nice pause or what have you. And I can always use that later. And speaking of that, if I actually did have a pause, let's say this was a nice pause. Okay, it's only this one is 1 second long, and sometimes we're in situations where we want to mask something. So I can't see anything from that big beam that's down here. I hope you're not seeing this as well, because it's. Okay, so what I could do here is I could just take this pause. I want to replace this. There might be something gritty in here that I don't want. I just want to have it nice and clean, but I don't want to just erase it because that would sound weird. I just want the room tone. So this could also just be, some people call it a room tone. And I could just take this room tone and just drop it into that pause there. So what you can see it's doing is just replaced the length of the clip that I had before. So it's not just pasting on top of it, it's actually replacing it. And the way that I did that, before you ask, is I just selected the area that I wanted to replace with this room tone and just dragged it on top and it will be replaced.
The room tone feature is actually, not the feature, but using that as a technique is actually very key. When I had my first podcast, I didn't know about this, unfortunately. And what happens if you do a lot of cuts in between, it makes it sound really staccato and you sound really odd. And, you know, I liked the way I sounded at the time. I hate it now, but I mean, if you really listen to it, you have to add a little bit of ambient noise to it. Otherwise you sound awfully strange.
Yes, and some people do. We actually often get the question, do you have a plugin for removing breaths? No, we don't, first and foremost. And two, it's a horrible idea. Do not do it. Because the thing is, if you're listening to something when no one is breathing, I know this is, you know, this could start a huge argument, but since I can't hear you, I'm just going to go with it. If you're listening to an entire podcast where no one is breathing, you'll just sit back and be gasping for breath and just beg them to, at some point, please breathe. And that's the problem. We're so used to people breathing now occasionally that we also expect them to do that when we're listening to it. So removing all breaths, not a good idea. And yes, it takes longer to do it properly. I do realize that. But doing a proper podcast takes time.
Nick, I'm going to move us along a little bit because we're going to run short on time. What I'd like to address is something maybe perhaps a little bit more advanced. We're talking about sharing sessions, you know, onto a thumbstick or a drive. But what if you want to do it like, let's say, FTP? If we're sharing to a server collaboratively on a network? Mm-hmm.
If it's the entire session, it's the exact same thing. You'll just because I don't actually have an FTP. So thanks for that question. But an FTP would just show up just like a folder, and then you'll just do a save as to that folder.
Actually, I think I should re-ask questions. So can we publish the session to an FTP folder for people to use?
As a bounced file?
So when we go file export, when we export and publish the session?
Yes. Okay, let's start somewhere else. Because what we've been talking about up until this point has just been how we exchange sessions. Now, a session will be something like this, where you have all the tracks, all the audio, you can go back and edit it at any time. When you do an export, you are now bouncing. I can do this. Let's just make a new folder here and call this export. We are now going to be bouncing everything into a single file. Now you can choose all kinds of different file formats that you want to export to. It's really not that important. Well, it is, but let's just stick to WAV for now. So we're going to export this as a WAV file, and well, it's a big session. What can I tell you? I have to wait a few seconds. Here's a cup of coffee.
Okay, well, that's going. We've got about 15 minutes left, so we're going to get in the Q&A here pretty soon while this is exporting out, okay?
Okay, so here we have it. So we've now effectively taken the whole session with all the sounds and all the tracks and just bounced it into one file. And this file can then be played in iTunes, or you can FTP this up to wherever. Now, that's one way of doing it. Then we could just take this file and put it into an FTP or go to a website and upload it. But we also do have this feature called Publish. And here we can set different export destinations. In my case, this has gone a bit crazy, but this is just because we've been testing out all our export destinations. No one in the world needs as many as this. But the idea is that I could now choose to say I want to target that is a specific FTP folder, maybe SoundCloud, Libsyn. You have all these different kinds of destinations that you can upload to. If you are using one of these services for hosting your podcast, that's great. If you have a radio background, PRX might be the thing for you. Which reminds me, that's the, interesting. There's another issue. Anywho, file upload. Here we have it. Okay, so I want to do an FTP. So I'm just going to create my FTP first. So I'm just going to create my FTP. And here I can say whenever I want to upload to an FTP, I want to do that in an M4A format at high quality. Yes, I want to normalize it. Should we get into normalizing? Or I think we've covered this one before. And here I could just type in the server, the username, the passwords, all the things that you'd expect from when you're uploading to an FTP. The advantage of this is you only have to do it once. So once you put all that information in there, it will show up here like an FTP. So if I wanted to now bounce this session that I've just done to my FTP, all I need to do is just find my publish, say click, because I've already done this. I would need to do that once. Click that, say publish, and I put in the wrong host name or something. But usually you don't get an error doing that, sorry about that. And it will just upload to that FTP. The great thing about this publish tool is, Jesus, I've got many of these things at the same time. I wasn't actually expecting us to be talking about this. I could upload to, let's say I could upload to these two, no, these ones. So I have one that's going to my Libsyn account and one that's going to my PRX account. I can just click them off and say publish, and they will be uploaded in one go.
Very cool. Yeah, sorry about that. I think that was more my interjection, and I think I kind of took us off track a little bit on that, just because I wanted to. What I think I really wanted to nail down was that while saving sessions, when you export, it's not so much on the collaboration aspect of it. It's more about being able to share the finished product. So when you're saving as Nick was showing, it's more where all the non-destructive elements of Hindenburg come into play. If you're publishing, and we're publishing our final assets to a destination.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna move us along here because I want to be mindful of everyone's time.
If you want to do a Q&A, this is a good time for it.
Yes, Q&A. Jonah asked earlier, when I import an MP3 and stereo split, does it save the 3 tracks in the file folder? Because sometimes I feel like it does, but sometimes it depends on if I drop it into the timeline straight away or drop it into the clipboard first.
Can you do that again? If you import an MP3, did you say 3 tracks?
It does say 3 tracks. Jonah, do you want to hop on and ask directly? We don't have a whole lot of questions, so we can actually do this today.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it isn't 3 tracks, but sometimes I feel like, for instance, an MP3, because it has to decode it into the wave, I would take, the way that it happens is I would take an MP3 and then I stereo split it because it's just in one ear. And then...
Would you do that before you drag it in? So if I take this MP3 here and just drag it in, so that will be decoded to a WAV file, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have something that is just recorded in 1 track?
Yeah, sometimes I have an MP3 that somebody recorded that's just in one right.
So you have just like a left channel or something.
Yeah.
And so you go up to tools and say split stereo, so they will have it divided onto 2 tracks.
So then in the files folder, is that just on 2 WAV files?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we save this now, you'll see in the file folders that you'll have a left and a right. It's the same as you can see down here, L and R.
Okay. So, because sometimes I felt like I would put it in and it saved it in the wave, and then it saved a left and a right, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, we can actually just try that. Let's say, okay. So now we're making a new session. Okay, let's see what we get when we do this. So this is the session that we just created, and these are the audio files. So let's see what we get. You're exactly right. You have 3 different files. This is the original file, the stereo file, and this is after we did a split. Then you have a left and a right.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes, I guess my question is, sometimes I feel like I somehow work it out where if I like drop it into maybe the clipboard or something, I can get it so that when I save it, it just saves the left and the right, or it just, because it basically, it's just, I have some redundant files sometimes. If for instance, what happens is the R file is just blank, there's nothing on it, and I don't need 300 kilobytes of space being taken up.
No, but if it is completely blank, it shouldn't actually have any size at all.
Actually, Nick, I think it depends on the source. Where are you dropping the source in from? Because sometimes you have like an MP4 file, and I've seen it in the past too, where you have like, I don't know, it seems like an extra file, but it's either the video track or it's not what's it called? It's not exported down to mono, and you've got the stereo left and right, but you don't get one of the tracks. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I usually do it from MP3. So yeah, I don't know.
You could go in and tidy it up manually afterwards, because if you're only using the one and you know which one it is, there won't be any reference to the other one. That should be okay. but usually, the file sizes are pretty small. It shouldn't be a big deal to have it lying around.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Is that it?
No, we've got a few more questions. What we're going to do today is we're going to quote unquote end the session at 3 o'clock, but I definitely want to have all the questions answered today. So in case you have to hop off, that's fine, but I want to make sure that we get to all the questions. Let's have fun. Jerry, Ked, you want to hop on and ask Nick your question about using field recorder? Jerry, you still with us here?
Yeah, I am definitely. You can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Quick question. Recording with a handheld mic or a shotgun mic, I have an XLR that I plug into the lightning port. And when I'm recording on the iPhone, the levels seem low to me. I know when I import audio into Hindenburg, it adjusts the gain automatically, but it still seems...
Not if it's too low.
Pardon?
Well, there's a number of questions right there. If we start at the end of it, we actually sometimes get questions about the auto level not working. Let me just address that one quickly. The thing is about the auto level, it will not work if the levels are too low. The reason for that is that the way that we measure sound is using loudness. So if you, loudness measures over an extent of time. So if you have something where there's nothing for a long time and then suddenly you have audio, what could happen is that when you're measuring that, it could all seem low and then we just turn everything up like 20 dB and suddenly you have distortion down the end. And then it would be going to be calling us saying, now you're introducing distortion, it's all your problem. So we're trying to be conservative about it and not gaining something where we have to gain it more than 13 dB. So that might be something that you've experienced. Going back to the field recorder, I can't actually show the field recorder because that really, I can't show that on the computer. The field recorder, on the newer versions of the iPhone, the gain function doesn't work on the built-in microphone. If you're using an external input, the gain will work. So you should be able to turn the gain up. But if you're just using the built-in microphone, it's not really something that we can do anything about. It's Apple that has just removed a chip, probably cost 50 cents or something like that. And we can't use the gain anymore on the built-in microphone.
Understood. This is XLR mic plugged into the lightning port. And so I'm using the gain.
That should work. Yeah.
Well, all I'm saying is and it may be the type of mic, but the real point is when I import into Hindenburg, it does adjust automatically, but it still seems low to me. And so your recommendation would probably be to take the audio file and raise the gain a bit, correct?
No, if you can actually see that Hindenburg is adjusting the level, then it should be set correctly.
Okay. And my last question is...
then the question would be, what are correct levels, I guess?
Yeah.
Is it just me, or do everyone
here on Jerry? Sometimes, like I'm using right now, I'm using a Rode shotgun mic while I'm doing this. But if I export this out using the Zoom, there's a lot of like built-in compressions. It depends on how the iPhone is recording. Because if they have like built-in compression, you're kind of alluding into it in a roundabout way. It could be some issues on the front end too. So.
Yeah. And then real quickly on export. So I've got my audio file. It's perfect. The edits are done, music, etc. Now I want to export it. I've been using the compressor to kind of even the levels, the loudness and the softer part.
Yeah.
Is that your recommendation as well?
You don't need to do it because your balance should really be fine already. The reason that you would want to use like a compressor on your, I would put it on the master track. Do you do that as well?
Yes.
Okay. It's really just it's more of do you like that sound where everything is slightly tighter?
Yes.
And that would be the reason for it, really.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And your levels, by the way, you should be peaking at around -9 on a QPPM meter if you're using that one.
Gotcha.
You can right-click on the meter down there.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to hit these questions down rapid fire session so we can get to these guys. Susanna asks, is there a way to add spaceball editing? Like if you have lots of different tracks, but you need to add space in the beginning, is there an easier way than hand selecting everything and moving it back?
Oh, definitely. That's a good question. We should do just an hour of Q&A. That would be fun. Okay, so if we just want to add some room at the beginning, there's actually a number of ways we can do that. Let me just first start off by saying, if I make a selection like this and I use Command right arrow, then I'm just going to insert that. By the way, if you're on a Windows, just when I say Command, you say Control. So now I'm just going to insert that amount of space. If I use left arrow, I'm just going to remove that amount of space. Now that said, if I do this on all tracks, just say, select something like that, say Command A for all tracks, Command right arrow for insert space, then I can insert space. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is a feature that is really handy. If you hold Alt Command, Alt for everything and Command for just for command, and then select a region, it will select from that region all the way out. So if I wanted to move something like this mix here, I could just select that all the way out and just move it. That's really, really handy and a proper fast way of rearranging your material. And lastly, there's also, you might already know this, but if you hold Shift and just drag, then you can drag a marquee over a selection like that. And you can move that as well. Did that answer your question, love?
Speaking to me, Nick. No, I think you did. I think you did. Okay, so we've got. I kind of want to keep the Q&A questions related to today, but it's okay. Let's hit these. So one of the questions from Judy is, how do you insert in a segment and make all other tracks ripple?
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out if I understand this properly. So I want to take something like, clearly not that.
And real quick, guys,
So
all the new Q&A questions. I'm sorry, Nick. All the new Q&A questions have to stop now because we have got 9 more questions to answer. Otherwise, we'll be here and everyone's time will be thrown off. So last questions are coming in, and then we're going to answer them, and then we have to cut today's session. Otherwise, we'll go way over. Okay? All right.
Okay. So what I would do here, if I understand it quickly, I would so copy or cut that so it will be in memory, and then I'll just figure out where I want to place it. This is really a messy way of doing it. And just say insert. And then it will just be inserted there. I hope that's what she means.
Nick, sorry, one more time. I was typing.
Well, you're the one who's supposed to pay attention.
I know.
Okay, so what I did was, what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to move the selection here. Well, actually, I could just do it as I did before, like that. So I'm going to copy that, or I can also just cut it. If I cut it, just use Command X, then it will be stored in memory. That's quite handy to know that, actually. And I'm just going to place my playhead where I want to insert it. Make sure I'm on the right. The first track is where the first track should be, at the top in this case. And just say insert, and it will insert that. Yeah, did I do that properly? That actually looked a bit weird. So, copy. I'll just do this on all tracks just to be on the safe side. and it'll just be inserted there. There are about 1 million different ways that you could do these things. There's no one right way of doing it. I could also, you know, just for the sake of the argument, I could have taken everything here and put that in my clipboard. And I could have gone down here and I could have made some room for it. There you go. And then I have no idea where it just went. Where did I actually put that? Did anyone actually have any idea where I just put that? Well, you know, you get the idea, and then I can just take that from my clipboard and just drag it out. It will have all the tracks there. I just forgot what to call. Never mind. The idea being, there's a number of different ways that you can go about it, whatever suits you the best.
All right,
Another question.
Next question is going to be from Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob asks, I feel like Dr. Phil all of a sudden. Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob asks, are there limitations, challenges, saving files to something other than MP3? In terms of listeners being able to upload the file. I was thinking he meant quality, but in terms of listeners,
that's a big issue. I think we should do that one day. Actually, it depends on your host. If you're doing a podcast, usually the podcast host will make it into a file format that works for them. Usually, you don't have to worry too much about it. Or alternatively, they will write what file format they recommend that you use. And we'll just export in any kind of odd format. So if they tell you to upload in an MP3 and do that at 128 kilobits in mono, you can just set it up for that. And loudness, normalize that at -16. You can just set all that up, just say save configuration, just use that next time you want to do an export. The same goes for publish as well.
So I think in terms of limitations, no, not limitations. I think it's more about preferences, and then your ability to, like, bandwidth. I think bandwidth is an issue. Your hosting, how much hosting do you have?
It's a huge issue. Yeah, because some people are paying for how big the file sizes are and how much they've been downloaded, so they actually want smaller file sizes. But obviously, the smaller file size you have, the worse quality it is. Long debate.
Okay. Now, this is kind of the next question, but it's more of like 6 questions. So if Judy, if you're still on here, I'd love for you to hop on and ask Nick. You got quite a few questions there. And I'd like to. It'd be fun to have you on if you want to jump on. Otherwise, I'll ask questions for you.
Okay. You do realize that you're going over the time that you said.
I know.
I don't care. I'm fine with it.
I know.
Go on.
It's true. Nick has to get to sleep here. It's what, 10 o'clock your time?
It's only 10 o'clock. I'm fine.
Okay.
This is Judy. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Judy.
Hi. Thanks so much. Sorry to come in late and then have questions. I don't know if things have been covered. So this is just my list of questions that I had before the session. So one is to see, I've been doing some kind of funny workarounds, it feels, to adjust my audio levels. When I don't want it to be all just straight, I understand how to hover over an area, bring it down. But often I want to do some finessing within these places as well as put in new points. It seems that's what I'm familiar with doing from Pro Tools. How do you put in new points to adjust your audio automation levels? You
don't.
Okay.
No, the way that you do it. Okay, there's 3 tools that you need to know. Well, actually, the 2 are pretty obvious. You know, you have a fade and the gain. Those are the ones that you're probably using right now.
Right.
Then we have one which is called duck, where you have a selection like this, and you grab inside the selection and just grab down or up.
Yeah, those I'm familiar with. But then you can't, but you can't make more points, huh?
Nope. And the last one is you can do a sound bed like this. Now, in the next version that we're going to do, you will be able to set points. The thing is, coming from Pro Tools, you will want this. I had the reverse experience the other day where I needed to do an edit in Pro Tools and actually also in Audacity at the same time, and found that what I had to do something as simple as what I just did here, I just wanted to do something like that. I had to go in and manually set a point there, set a point there, set a point there, point there, and nothing was aligned, everything was askew, and it took me forever to do it.
But you can't, and there's no like S curves or, sorry.
No, because it's, I understand if you are a trained sound engineer, knowing the difference between a linear curve and an S curve makes sense. If you're not, it's just a dump shit that's just going to confuse you. Now, when we actually do these fades here, this is an S curve. It might look straight, but it is actually an S curve. If you want to do a seamless crossfade in Pro Tools, where you can't hear the fade here, you would need to know quite a lot about different fade curves. Here, you just drag something like that, and you could just play, and you will not be able to hear that there's actually a crossfade. I'm just saying it's way, way faster. But if you are coming from Pro Tools and you, let me put it another way. I had in the early days of we were doing this, I had a lot of talks back and forth with Jeff Town from Echoes, and he was kind enough to help us out with doing a lot of testing. And he'd been working for years and years and years in Pro Tools. And he said, will you ever make a pen tool? And I kept telling him, no, I'm not going to make a pen tool because everything is just makes everything more confusing. And he kept banging on about the pen tool. Want to put a swear word in there. And I said, no, I want to make something that's simple where you have the tools that you want to use like 90% of the time, make that really simple. Yes, there are some limitations. There are some fiddly things that you can't do, but that's okay. You don't, this is not a tool for everything. And I think about a year later or something like that, I had a chat with him over a whiskey in Chicago, and he said, you know what? I don't need that pen tool anymore because now I understand how this works, and you don't need it. And I said, I told you. And he said, it's just way faster because the thing is, coming from I've been working with Pro Tools, doing music and radio drama and what have you. It's great to have that accuracy where you can go in and do really finesse a little thing. But I hated it when I was doing proper radio production. I had a deadline. I didn't have like an enormous amount of time to fiddle around with a mix and get something wrong. And another thing is when you have these waypoints that are set there, they were never actually attached to the audio. See, well, if I move something around like that, or just moved it to another track, I could be quite sure I was going to be spending the next 10 minutes cleaning up the automation line. You've probably done that in Pro Tools as well. And to be honest, you can do it, but it's just fiddly and it's unnecessary. So I mean, you can blame me for this. I just said there's a lot of things that you really don't need. Just get used to it.
Let me just jump in before it gets too politically incorrect.
Now it's going to be political. No, I'm not finished.
Let's not go that direction, because what Nick's not trying to say is that Pro Tools sucks. It's not about that. It's different.
No, it's not about that.
Different tools, different tasks.
It's not about that. The thing is, Pro Tools is a fantastic tool. So I love all the other tools that are out there. Logic, I use them for different things. But if I'm doing radio or podcast radio, Pro Tools is not designed for that. It's designed for doing a movie production. It's designed for doing a 3-minute music production, and it's fantastic for that. It's seriously not designed for doing radio. And I know this because I've talked to the developers. They don't really care about radio too much. Now I'm getting political. Now
Yeah, that's fine. I was used to it, and that's why I was asking if there was something, because I've been doing workarounds, but I thought there was something faster. So another question that, and maybe this is going to be too long, is how to use the profiler and how.
Actually, the profiler is a great question to ask, because I think it hits home what Hindenburg is all about. It's the audio editing made easy. It's not audio editing made meticulous, anal, or just hours and hours of beating on different repetitive tasks. The profiler is perfect. So Nick,
it is.
You can.
I just wanted to,
Sorry, I was just going to say,
finishing this one off.
How long would it take you to do this in Pro Tools?
Do a profile.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to finish off what we just had before, I did this mix here. I was doing a demonstration the next night, where it's got a huge amount of tracks. It's sort of radio drama, and it's got all kinds of fun editing on it. And it took a couple of hours to do this. So you can do really complex mixes with this. Now, enough said about that. I could go on about this forever, as you might imagine. Voice profiling is really, really simple. Now, the voice profiler, the idea there is that you have a piece of audio which has the sound of yourself that you want to use. So there may be something that has been on air or what have you. And the way to create a voice profile is really simple. You just say learn profile, and it's going to learn from whatever is on that track. And you just save that. No. Chuck will be Clark. There you go. And that's it. That's how you make a profile. And when you want to use it,
so they launched a website called One Frame.
This is Clark, and he has no idea what he sounds like. He's just going to go in and apply his profile, the one we just did. That's it.
Of fame. On the site, you're presented with one frame from the video.
And that's it, really.
I think it's subtle. I'm not sure if you can hear it, especially.
It sounded a little bit better. And does that help with, because I've been using the Skype and it still sounds kind of wonky. Is there anything that you recommend of how to make a Skype call not sound that kind of little bit robotic-y, or there's some quality to it that clearly doesn't sound the same as it.
Yeah, no,
that's just Skype compression.
The thing is, it's you can't introduce sound that's missing. And the problem with Skype and, for that matter, MP3 and what have you, is they're hugely compressed, which means that you're basically taking away most of the original signal. And this is why it gets a bit tinny and roboty and what have you. And you can't introduce that again, because it's gone. It's gone forever.
Okay.
That being said, though, Nick, if Judy were to record her best sounding voice and sample it into a voice profile, if you had crappy sounding Skype voice, you could overlay.
The Skype voice would still be the same. You can always go in and add just an equalizer and maybe tidy it up a bit if you know how to use an equalizer. I guess you do if you're coming from Pro Tools.
Well, I just do it according to what it sounds like, which I don't know. That's not very scientific. I don't know what I'm looking for on the graph.
No, but mind you, the best way of doing it is what it sounds like. But really, when it comes to phone sound and sound from Skype, there's really not a lot of signal. Most of the signal is around this area here between 1K and 5K. And that's really where you have the meat of your signal. That's why it sounds bad, to be honest.
Okay.
What you could do instead is, depending on who it is that you're recording, if is this a host that you use, a co-host or something?
No, it was interview.
It's just
interviews.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, another tip might be to have them record locally while you're doing the Skype interview, and then have them upload the file to you afterwards.
Sure. Okay. And I missed the beginning with the file management, but I'm just wondering what people's systems are for logging. And what I've done is just upload the file that I'm going to be working with on the track one, and then I just keep it there kind of untouched and copy the segments that I want to bring down and utilize in the session. Is that a system you use for logging, or what is your system?
No, You can do that, but I would use the clipboard, and you might afterwards. Chuck is going to upload this, and we have a chat about the clipboard and how you can use that. It's a way better way of logging your material.
Okay, so I'll have to. So this has been recorded, and I can go back to that.
Yeah, and we also have tutorials on it on the website.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Judy. Thanks for hopping on.
Thank you.
Guys, you guys, quite a few of you have stayed on. So
That's great.
Yeah, thank you for staying on until the very end of the Q&A. I think it's my fault a little bit. I got a little long with the Q&A. It's my fault, but definitely appreciate you guys for being here for an extra 20 minutes. As Nick was saying, we have tutorials that go through step by step everything that's covered today on our website, but I will post this to Facebook, to YouTube. So if you want to follow us on Facebook, if not already, please do so. And then you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, and it'll be there. But if you emailed us and registered for the Q&A, obviously you did, I will send out an email to you as well. Okay. Definitely appreciate you guys for being here. If you have,
I was just about to say something. Can I just jump in and say something?
No.
If you have, great. If you have additional questions or anything that you would like us to cover, could you just please write to Chuck, and yes, you, and he will. We will be able to put some of these webinars together, so they really fulfill all your needs. Hopefully.
It's funny. We had a request to have like an hour-long Q&A, but you can see how long that would get, right? That would be like a 3-hour call.
Long.
Yeah, that would end up being a 3-hour.
It would be fun though. I like doing Q&As.
What I wouldn't be opposed to is if you guys didn't care so much, because I like to keep things loosey-goosey, as I think you can tell. So does Nick, and so it's not too stuffy. But if you guys didn't mind having something informal, I could do these unofficial calls every now and again on a more frequent basis, and that way we could I'd love to hang out with you guys and say hi. It's fun. Nick, do you have anything else you want to add to it?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I think Nick has to get to sleep here. Actually, we have to do a quick follow-up call afterwards, but thank you guys for being here. I'm going to end this now. And, I'm so sorry. This is my bad. If you guys are using Journalist, and if you guys would like to upgrade to the Pro version, just message me, and I can give you a code to a discount for that, okay? But that's what it is. Okay.
Someone's going to go.
Just follow me on Twitter at Hindenburg. Facebook on Twitter. Just DM me and let me know. Or you can email, reply to your email that we sent out for the webinar notifications, and I will let you know that way as well. Okay. All right. Again, thanks guys for being here. Appreciate you. Hope you had fun. That's the whole point, is to have fun, enjoy what you're doing. And again, to make audio editing easy. All right. See you guys.
Bye.